Um, Hello to everybody, and welcome. And as a new year is only 10 days old, I wish everybody a happy new year. And thank you for being interested in deny all security solutions. We, the presentator, are Harald Beutelhauser, my technical colleague responsible for Germany and Austria, and Simone Höfig, the same, responsible for Germany and Austria, but in sales. Well, in the next 45 minutes, we will tell you a bit about vulnerability scanning. But first, before starting, some information regarding the logistics. Your microphone is on mute, so if you have any questions, and I hope you will have some questions, please use the chat function. There's enough time to answer the questions at the end of the webinar. And this webinar is not only about listening and watching. Stay alert, we will have questions. That would be very kind of if you answer them, at least. Studies show that 80% of websites and web applications are vulnerable. They have at least one serious vulnerability. And these vulnerabilities can make it easier for cybercriminals to steal sensitive information. For example, login credentials, customer information, sensitive data, and so on. The challenge in everyday business concerning these vulnerabilities is to find out, are there vulnerabilities in my environment? If so, where are they? How can I identify them? And last but not least, how can I get rid of them? And this has in hand with regulations, with your own corporate policy, and to mention another important point you should consider, it has to go hand in hand with corporate and governmental compliance guidelines. Let's say a bit about deny all. If you will have a look at the following slides, you will see the breaking news. Deny all is a subsidiary of a large German industrial group of Rode & Schwarz. Rode & Schwarz is a family-owned business founded more than 80 years ago and is a global leader in test and measurement environment technologies. The cybersecurity we are joining creates network security, encryption, and endpoint security products. And so we are glad that we can offer you trusted solutions from one single source. If you're interested in these solutions, there we have a short overview from UTM, from Unified Threat Management over next generation firewalls to secure endpoints and so on. If you are interested in solutions, and I think you are, need to deny all Rode & Schwarz story, please feel free to register for a webinar on January the 17th. Back to deny all and its solution. It starts with detect, and that's the reason why we are today here together. Detect is the name of our vulnerability manager. It's all about identifying assets and detecting and prioritizing vulnerabilities. First, the name of our web application firewall. It's not only about HTTP and HTTPS, but you can block text via JSON, XML, REST, the whole machine communication. If you are interested in enabling users having a single sign-on over websites or web applications, then connect is the right product for you. And last but not least, manage the management system which reports and monitors the web application firewall. Well, that's a really extremely short overview. I could tell you hours about it, but we only have about 45 minutes, so I have to reduce it. Well, what do we mean with vulnerability management issues? You all know, I'm sure you all know, these audits taking place on a regular basis, don't you? But what are the results? Who takes action afterwards? Are the applications going live all the time? Are they really secure? Or are there any undiscovered vulnerabilities in them? Assuming a huge number of vulnerabilities, are you able to prioritize them? Assuming that every application is vulnerable, why do a few development teams use scanners to identify and fix issues while developing apps and fixing these in advance? Some applications can't be modified, I'm sure you know. Just think of Outlook Web Access or ERP or management systems or cloud-based. Their patching might be a solution to fix these vulnerabilities. What are you doing with web pages behind authentication? Their vulnerabilities are pretty hard to identify. During the time we are talking, be assured a lot of applications have changed. You can't do that on a manual basis. You need to automate the process. So, as mentioned in the beginning, the webinar is not only about listening and watching. You have to work hard. It would be very kind of you to answer these two questions. Do you use a vulnerability scanner so far? There are three possibilities to answer. We're using a commercial product, or yes, an open source or freeware tool, or no, not yet. And the second question is concerning your main concerns with vulnerability management. Is your main concern about integration, meaning using and leveraging the product in your organization, or do you want a system, or first concern patching vulnerabilities, how to do this? It would be very kind if you click one in each question, one answer in each question, and submit.
So, I think we need a little bit more time. Only few of you have already answered these questions, so maybe we wait another minute.
Okay. And while you can be assured that will be the second part of the presentation with technical help by my colleague Harald Beutelhausen.
Okay, so no more answers. I will close the poll. Okay, thank you very much for answering this. Honestly, I'm not sure if you can now see the results of this, we have some, most of you of the ones who have answered, or half of them have already a commercial product in production, and half of you don't have it yet. So you don't. So half of you roundabout has a vulnerability scanner, the others don't have it. Only one has an open source or freeware tool, which is quite natural because these freeware tools are really bothersome to use. So they need really expert knowledge to use and get good results out of them. Regarding your main concerns, the main concern seems to be the remediation of vulnerability, which means the patching and the closing of tickets and so on, which is quite natural because these vulnerability scanners can find a lot of vulnerabilities, and it could be a lot of work. So this is one of the things we need to talk about in the next section of our presentation. And this is more or less how can you effectively use a vulnerability scanner? For what do you have to look out to get a real good tool which is fitting for your requirements? So, and we will have a look at all these 3 points later on in this presentation. First of all, it must be automated because, as already said, changes are quite everywhere. So your network will change, your servers will change, your application will change. So to do a vulnerability scan just once is not enough. It has to be done on a regular basis, and this has to be automated. Then, of course, it has to be comprehensive. So you really need an in-depth analysis of your vulnerabilities, that you really can rely on the results and you really know that at least most of the vulnerabilities have been found. Honestly, there is no tool who will find all vulnerabilities. So all these tools cannot replace a human auditor who has the experience to do in-depth test, but depending on the tools, these can do a quite deep analysis of your network, of your servers, and so on. And third part, of course, now you have a report, you have found your vulnerabilities. Now you have to do something. So the tool needs to help you to prioritize which vulnerability has to be done first, and it has to help you to keep track of all these vulnerabilities. So let's start with the automated scanning. Regarding automated scanning, of course, you need to integrate these scanners in your environment. And for that, you have to look out because many companies have very, very complex networks. So you have subsidiaries, you have remote sites, and these remote sites are probably connected via VPN to your main central site, but that's not guaranteed. So how can you handle these remote sites without any network or secure network connection to your central site? So also these remote sites need to be scanned. And another point is, of course, many tools have a cloud service, and so from a cloud service you only can scan from the outside, which is good for your DMZ, because here the cloud service can connect to your DMZ and do the scan from the outside here. But a cloud service will probably not be able to do a scan of this remote site 2. It's not directly connected to the internet, and probably you don't want to have a connection from the internet to your internal network and do a network scan there. So that would be quite ridiculous. That wouldn't help you at all. So in the end, there's no way around it to have scanning nodes directly in your network, and for that you need to have different possibilities. One might be a scanning node in your remote site 2, which then sends the data directly to your central site where you can analyze it, get your reports and everything. But for, in this case, remote site 1, which has no network connection, you need a different path how you can execute a scan there. One possibility, and this is what our tool does, is it does a scan in the remote site, stores all the data on a USB stick, and then you can bring back this USB stick to your central site and read it there. The reason for that, why do we use a USB stick and don't send it back to the cloud? One of the important things to think about cloud-based solutions is always, where is the data? And these scanning data has all your security vulnerabilities in it. And it's always a good question to ask, where's the data stored and who might have access to this data? So that's one reason why many of our customers don't want any cloud-based solutions, because with Detect, we can guarantee that no one other than yourself have the data of these vulnerability scans. So with our product, the scan data never leaves your network, which might be a very important part depending on your security needs. Of course, these scans need to be automated, and regarding automation, there are in the end 3 main things. First of all, your network changes all the time, probably. Quite natural for nearly all companies I know. There are new servers, there are new machines, and other old machines just disappear, and so on and so forth. So you need a continuous scanning about your assets, about your network devices, about your servers. So this is one point. This is very important. The next one, of course, is the same is true for your vulnerabilities. With all new devices, maybe new vulnerabilities come up, and therefore you also need to do vulnerability searches on a regular basis. This might be once per week, which could be fine, or even once per day, or something like this. And the last thing, of course, is when vulnerabilities are found, you need to report them. So the last very important point, which also need to be automated on a regular basis, is the reporting of new vulnerabilities. Okay. And last but not least, which might help you for automation, is an API. So I would always look out for a tool which is able to use an API, so where I can where I can put on my own written tools and automate things much further. So also an API might help you when doing these automatations. Then, of course, comprehensive scanning. Yeah, let's start with a new poll. 1 second, I need to activate it. Okay, so now we would be interested what kind of vulnerabilities you are really concerned about network vulnerabilities or applications, or both equally. So if you have applications, more or less web applications as the main part, are you more concerned about your network, about your application, or both? And the other primary concern, is it your internal network or subsidiaries? Do you have a large company network with many subsidiaries or providers? Or are you mainly concerned about external network and applications because you are working a lot in the cloud with a lot of external providers? So please answer these questions. Okay, I'll give you some more time. So, okay, I think I can close the poll. So most of you, or half of you, are concerned about the applications, and the other half is both equally. So most of you are more concerned about the application, not so much about the network vulnerabilities. And none of you is concerned about your subsidiaries or providers, but most of you are concerned about external network and applications, which is quite reasonable because network vulnerabilities in the end are mainly found by your network firewalls and so on and so forth. Okay, so then, okay, let's continue. When doing such a scan, these web applications or applications at all have an N-tier architecture. Though in the end, the application is on the top and it's based on the servers on the network and all the things and assets and tools beneath it. So we need, of course, to scan everything top down. So first of all, okay, we need to scan the web application for SQL injection, cross-site scripting, for all these things. But of course, underlying on the application itself, there's the web server, there's the scripting engine, there are PHP versions, Apache vulnerabilities, or some things like this. So of course, yes, after the application itself, we also need to scan the web server and the below system. And the web server and the systems then rely on the network. And of course, then we have also to check the network for SSH accounts with trivial passwords, unpatched FTP servers, open FTP servers, and all these things. So, and then after the network, of course, the application mainly relies on database and storage, because most applications have some data to process, and this data is stored either in the database or in any storage. So therefore, we really have to scan the whole stack top down, from the application really top down to the basic network layer, which is quite natural. Regarding web applications, they might be very complex to scan, because one of the main things there is the authentication, because the scanner needs to get a session a valid session for a user account. And therefore, in most scanners, you can enter username, password, so that the scanner can log into the web application. But sometimes that's not possible. Maybe you have a multi-factor authentication. In this case, it's very hard to automate things. And therefore, you should look out for a tool which is able to also handle these very complex use cases. And one of the examples, or this is how we do it, we can set our detect tool in a proxy mode. Then the user can connect to the web server, can do the authentication, and then the detect tool takes over this valid session and does all its tests. So this is a possibility how we can handle extremely complex login authorizations and still do a deep scan of your application. So also, whatever tool you need, it should provide you something like this. And so the last point here, or the next point, is of course how do we handle the results. First of all, we need to prioritize them, and this needs to be done with some kind of risk evaluation. And the best method for this is combine your importance of the asset with a vulnerability score, and which means, so even if you have a medium vulnerability on a very important system like your internal accounting system, then this vulnerability should get a very high priority. On the other hand, if you have a medium vulnerability on a very unimportant system which is seldom used at all, then probably the priority can just drop down. So you should also use a tool which can handle this and can help you with prioritize these vulnerabilities. Regarding reports, I don't want to talk about it now. I have it on the next slide. What is very helpful is if you can connect your tool, your vulnerability scanning tool, with a ticketing system, because you will get a lot of vulnerabilities, and therefore you need to handle all these vulnerabilities, and you need to keep track of these vulnerabilities. So therefore, a ticketing system is the best solution for that, because it's more or less each vulnerability is a problem which needs to be resolved, and this is what a ticketing system is for. So you should also combine this vulnerability scanning tool with your ticketing system. In our case, there's already a ticketing system built into our detect tool. About reporting, that's quite easy at this point. Of course, a vulnerability scanner needs to provide you reports for all these different levels. So from executive to technical, a manager is interested in different information than really the technical guy who has to solve this vulnerability. So you definitely need different levels of reporting, and of course you should be able to adapt these reports to your needs. So it should be possible to have templates which can be customized. Also, you need different formats for your reporting. PDF probably more for executives, Word, maybe Excel more for technical guys, and XML for virtual patching. One of the possibilities to solve vulnerabilities is due to virtual patching, and we will talk later on about it. So, which brings me to the next point. This is about the next topic, more or less about vulnerability scanning, virtual patching. And because for virtual patching you would need a web application firewall. And now we are interested, do you already have a WAF, or do you plan to get a WAF, or do you know what a WAF is? Good question. And what's your opinion about virtual patching? So do you already use it? Do you know what it is, more or less? Or, okay, what's your opinion about it? So please answer. Okay. I think we can close this poll also. Okay. The good point is, it seems all of you know what a WAF is, so that's very good. Half of you are already using a web application firewall, and half of you are planning to do it in the near term, or could be done in the near term. Regarding virtual patching, most of you says sounds nice on paper, never tried it. Maybe now is the time to really try it out, because it really can help you. But okay, one said it's implemented and it's the way to go. And okay, for one person it didn't work, so okay, maybe so even virtual patching is of course quite complicated, because vulnerabilities in web application can be highly complex. So it's possible that it cannot solve everything. Few of you said, okay, another marketing buzzword. Honestly, no, not really. It really has a reason, and it could help, but only in conjunction when you have a vulnerability scanner and a web application firewall, of course. So what does virtual patching, or what's the idea behind it? One point is you can use your vulnerability scanner against your application, and the vulnerability scanner then generates a set of policies which can be directly integrated into the WAF, and then you have for your application very individual policies which exactly fits to your application and its vulnerabilities. This is the one part. Then, of course, you need to implement this with the WAF. After that, a good point is to check again with the vulnerability scanner and the WAF if really all of these vulnerabilities are now solved. Okay. So we have one example here from our WAF in this case, of course. Here is just an empty policy set. So more or less the WAF doesn't do anything, it just lets everything through it. And with virtual patching, we get a whole set of policies exactly for this application, and therefore we can do a better protection for exactly this application. Very often, or why do we do virtual patching at all? Maybe I should talk about it also a little bit. The point is that a lot of your web application are not under your direct control. So you do not have the source code, you cannot change anything there. So if you find a vulnerability in one of these applications, you have to wait for a patch to come out to implement this patch in your application to be secure and the vulnerability and to close this vulnerability. This might take a very long time depending on the vendor of this software. And virtual patch can work as a workaround for a real patch of the application. So with virtual patching, you more or less get time to solve security issues until the real programmer has a solution which solves the issue in the application directly, which might be a very good thing. Another thing is web services. Web services is something which is more and more coming. So most of the current web applications which are used with a browser will be in future be used by mobile phones, by tablets and all these things. And in this case, they are using web services. They are not using the normal GUI of a web application. They go over web services. Web services are quite difficult to protect because they are also very powerful, and therefore it can help to combine a scanner with your web services firewall. And one way is the scanner provides a whitelist for the WAF, or the web services firewall in this case, and therefore with whitelisting, everything else which is not in the whitelist is forbidden, and this is a very good way to protect your web services. And the other way around is also, of course, the WAF can learn the sitemap due to how it is used from its own logs, and send these logs to the vulnerability scanner, and the vulnerability scanner can then check exactly these URLs which are really used in the web services. So also it should be possible, whatever tool you use, to combine these this vulnerability scanner with your web services firewall. Okay, so I think we are nearly through. So regarding the first 7 points you got in the beginning of this presentation, hopefully we were able to give you some tips how you can solve these issues. First of all, used by auditors. So when you have a vulnerability scan, the reports, the vulnerabilities should go into a ticketing system so you can follow up them and solve them. Regarding new applications, new assets, and all these things, you need to you need to have automatic discoveries of all your assets, and it has to be done on a regular basis, once per week, once per day, whatever you choose. But to do it one time is not enough because changes are too often. Then to solve all the vulnerabilities might be really a nightmare. especially for large networks. So you need to prioritize them, and therefore you need to do a risk evaluation, and you need to prioritize your vulnerabilities according to these risks, and then you get a good list of tickets which can be solved one by one. And okay, as said before, more or less, applications are vulnerable. It's very seldom that you have an application without any vulnerabilities. So these scans must be automatic and must be done on a regular basis. In the practice, a lot of applications can't be modified because you don't own the source code for them, and therefore virtual patching might be a workaround until the real patch from the software vendor is really released. So this might help. Okay, yeah, quite natural. Some vulnerabilities are hard to identify, so the more in-depth analysis you have, the better it is. That's quite natural. And last but not least, you need to automate the whole process because application change, your networks changes, and you cannot handle this with a manual process. So it must be automated and done on a regular basis. Okay, so I hope you liked this short presentation. For the next steps, you can have a demo, of course, for our vulnerability manager. You can easily get a trial license. You have all the information on the slide. Like my colleague already said, next week there are some webinars about the acquisition from Rohde & Schwarz. And okay, there are also several other demos regarding this.